All right, today is my back and biceps workout. So I already did a little bit of a warm up here, but gonna finish up and I actually make this part of my actual workout. So it's not just a warm up. First thing I like to do when I'm gonna do any kind of pull down is I like doing it with bands first. If you followed any of these workouts, you've already seen me do this before. I like to just stick my hands through the loop there and grab onto it. It's almost like using lifting straps. Now I can take the focus off of grabbing the band and put my focus on driving those elbows down and getting a really strong contraction. So not only is this a good warm up, but it's also a good warm up, let's call it, for mind muscle connection. Really tuning in on that technique, driving the elbows down, getting that good squeeze there in the lats. And it really sets the tone for the rest of the workout. That feeling that you get, that nice strong contraction, that's what you want to chase when we go over and actually do our real pull downs. I want to try to get that same squeeze, that same feeling. And that's my personal benchmark. And that sets the tone for how much weight I use, etc. Because if in the process of adding on weight, I lose that mind muscle connection, that good squeeze, and my focus shifts more to just moving weight, that's my cue to go ahead and back off slightly on the resistance level so I don't lose that feeling. Do a few more here. And in the process, gets muscles nice and warm, loosens up the joints. So that being said, I'm going to grab a straight bar here. Actually, that's not true. So I'm going to use this bar. They call this a spreader bar. If you're working out at home or in a gym and you don't have one of these, it's not a big deal. What will also work is a bar with what they call neutral grip. So that's your bar that has the circles on the end, and then you've got your handle that's perpendicular. So a lot of people just call that a neutral grip bar. Truth be told, after all these years, I don't even know really what you call that bar other than that. Grab these handles. And I included this in last week's back workout, talking about hand position when doing any of our pull downs or rows, that when we have our hands in a pronated position, so palms away from us, or even in a neutral position, makes it a little more difficult to use biceps. Versus a supinated, palms facing us, puts the biceps in a really strong position, and then you have a tendency sometimes to use too much biceps in the movement. So typically why I don't do a lot of what you would call chin-ups, same thing, palm facing you. Can be a great biceps exercise though. All right. Like I said, now this allows me to use a more neutral position as opposed to a pronated position like we would in a regular bar. So just like we did with the bands, where are you? Over here. Driving those elbows out wide and then down. Get a little Nice arch in the back by pushing the chest out and chin up. Give you a better contraction. I like to get that little momentary pause or squeeze down there at the bottom. There's 10. Let me see if we can get 2 more. One more. Nice stuff. So stretching out in between our sets. Keep those rest periods short. Me personally, I like about 90 seconds. Gives me just enough time to recover, but keep the tempo up for the whole workout. Keep intensity up. All right, set 2. I'm going to leave the band here. We'll use that on our 3rd set, just as a bit of a finisher. Actually, we'll end up going up in resistance a little. Okay. So come over to the side here, body posture, maybe even a little more here. I don't know if there's a good view, but it's really easy to kind of let the shoulders come forward and the head come forward. This is not a good position here. So chest out, chin up, slight arch in the back. There we go. Now, not going very heavy here. If I did, I would go ahead and use some wrist straps. Not because it's so heavy that I can't hold on, but I say this a lot. When it's heavy enough where you feel your grip start to fatigue, like these muscles in your forearm are not as strong as these bigger muscles in your back. And so chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And so if your grip starts to fatigue before your back does, and all your focus starts to go towards your hands because you're losing your grip, then you have a tendency to focus too much on the hands, pull with the hands, using more biceps, as opposed to putting the focus on your elbows and driving them down and getting a good strong contraction in your back. So it all comes down to focus. Where's your focus? So I don't want to put my focus in my hands, and so by using straps, it allows me, like I said, to put it where it belongs, which is on the elbow. Kind of talk there in circles, but fuck it. I was going to say, it's starting to sound like one of these political speeches. Conversation that talks in circles and goes nowhere. All right, here we go. So first thing, chest out, chin up. So that was 12 by 9. Starting to fatigue there with the grip. So the nice thing about this as a finisher is by looping those hands in, I don't have to worry about grip strength anymore. So squeeze out a few more good reps. Nice. Cool thing about the bands, gives you a lot more freedom of movement. So instead of being limited to this more linear movement like you are with a band, although I've got more flexibility because of those handles that'll move, but with a traditional bar, you're kind of locked in there. So has a tendency to be more linear, whereas with the bands, that freedom of movement allows you to get a better squeeze, in my opinion, at least for me. So it's 3 sets of those. Done. Check. Take these handles off. We're going to use these again. Put the bar away. And I'm going to do a seated row. But every once in a while I like to do single arms because you're able to get a little better squeeze at the end of the range of motion. I'll show you why. I'll leave the bands here. Probably do the same thing. Use those as a finisher. All right. So most of the time, especially in commercial gyms, you'll see a lot of people use this attachment, which I don't mind. It's not bad. But as I come in, one, I can only drive my elbows so far back, right? Because this bar is literally going to hit the front of my stomach here. And also, see how my elbows have to flare out wide like this? If they were a little wider, then I could drive them straight back. I like the contraction better. So my preference over this would be something, maybe a neutral grip bar that's wider. You could even use, see, I have a shorter version of that spreader bar. Could do the same thing, gives you a lot more freedom. But if you don't have something like that, all we do is come over and do singles. And now, imagine I'm sitting there. I'm not limited by anything hitting my chest. There's no bar. So I can drive that elbow nice and close to the body and drive that elbow really far back and get a super strong contraction there. So it's not just about range of motion, how far back I can get the elbow. It's also that angle of the elbow relative to the body. Well, how did I manage to do that? All right. I'm gonna have to lighten that up. Perfect. So, one thing that I try to focus on when I do these, or something that I try not to do, is rotating my torso. And I've caught myself doing it. I see other people doing it. It's just a natural inclination as we're trying to drive that handle backwards to want to pull this way. And you even see the head turn that way as well. So I like to focus on something directly in front of me and visualize keeping my shoulders square to the machine here. And then driving that elbow straight back. A little slight arch in the back. So again, chest out, chin up. That's 11. 12, good. Switch sides here. So I was trying to think about hitting my side with that handle. I know if I can hit my side with the handle, that means the elbow is definitely driving backwards. Now, pros, cons. So pro, besides being able to keep that elbow close and drive it really far back, is if you have any kind of low back issues where a typical rowing movement maybe puts a little bit of strain on your back, maybe you got an injury, etc. By doing a single arm, it allows you to put your hand on your leg and brace your torso a little bit. And that also is a good cue to make sure that you're not rocking your body back and forth inadvertently. As far as cons, probably the biggest one is being unilateral, doing one side at a time just takes twice as long. That's probably the biggest downside. All right, let me grab a drink of water. Quick stretch, and we'll go into set 2. Now, one little thing, whether I'm doing pull downs or rows, that I'm always trying to think about is minimizing the movement at the elbow. So if we're doing a row, a lot of movement at the elbow, which means a lot of biceps, would look like this right here. So what I try to think about is minimizing that movement at the elbow and then driving that elbow back. See how, look at the angle here at the elbow with this versus this. Same thing with pull downs. This versus this. Like I said, hand right here on the leg. Now not only does this brace me, take some of the pressure off my low back, but also is a nice cue to make sure that I'm not moving forward or backward. So I'm trying to touch right above my hip bone. If I come higher, I'm going to have no choice but to use more biceps. One more. And again, really easy to kind of round forward. Think about posture. Two more. One more. Oh. Yeah, but don't take my word for it. Try it both ways. See how it feels. And that's part of the game. Trying different things, taking mental notes of how that feels. And over time, you're going to start to zero in on some of those little adjustments that make a difference and help you get a better contraction. Try it my way, try it a different way, try it all sorts of different ways. This stuff's no different than anything else. The other day I compared it to someone, mastering their own golf swing. I was listening to a guy who has a channel, it's all tactical stuff. he was talking about grip position versus trigger pull presentation. He said it. He's like, look, this is what works for me. It may not work for you because there's a lot of different ways to do it. Same thing here. And that's where everyone wants to, debate. Oh, that's wrong. This is right. Blah, 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 blah. Figure out what you like. Here we go. It's a nice squeeze. Definitely feeling those. Hey. One more. Yeah. For a little band finisher here. Now don't do what I'm about to do. Don't wrap your band around a piece of equipment like this. Just puts unnecessary wear and tear on it, but I'm doing it anyway. Bad boy. Same thing, hands through the loop. Mimic the exact same thing. I'm gonna come lower with the band so it mimics that, where it's closer to waist height. Same concept. Drive those elbows down close to the body. Push that chest out and elbows back. Okay. Nice. Now, little details like this, you can find the longer you do this, and I've been doing this shit a really long time, that textbooks aren't going to teach you this stuff. They're going to teach the basics. You could go get your PhD. It's not going to teach you this stuff. Again, it's going to teach you the fundamentals. Everything has to be refined over time by trying different things and learning your own body, learning to feel, learning to tune in. So whether you try some of the stuff I'm suggesting, you try the advice of someone else or 100 different people, that's totally up to you. But ultimately, it's going to come down to you sorting through that. In other words, experience. There's no substitution for just getting in there and fucking doing it a lot. That's how you get good at anything. All right. So that first row, keeping the elbows close to the body, driving that elbow back. That's a great way to work the lats. We don't work as much of the upper back, so that's what we're going to focus on here. This is going to be a high row. So instead of those elbows being tight to the body, elbow nice and low, we're going to come with the elbow higher and wider right here. And we're going to focus on squeezing those shoulder blades together as we do that. What are we going to do here? What are we going to do? We've got so many different options. I think I'm actually going to grab the bench and do these with the dumbbells, and then maybe we'll start off with a band just to really zero in on that mind-muscle connection, and you can see the mechanics of it because it's not going to change at all with the dumbbells. It's the same thing. So I'll put this on a slight incline. I like to be as horizontal as possible while still having clearance with the dumbbell here at the bottom. So this is a little low because I can touch the floor with my hands, so I'll come up one notch. Just like so. I wish there was a notch in between, to be honest. Now the technique, again, don't do what I'm about to do. It's actually not quite as bad on this piece of equipment because the corners are rounded and smooth, but still, it's a great way to damage your bands. Okay. With the bands, just like with the dumbbells, our path starting at about chest height, driving those elbows wide, keeping them high, but still keep that chest out, chin up, and thinking about squeezing those shoulder blades together. Me personally, that's how I like to initiate the movement. So I'm thinking step one, initiate it at the shoulder blades, squeezing together. 2, it's driving those elbows back. And then just making it one smooth motion. What I don't want to do is initiate the movement at the hands right here. And that means we're initiating with the biceps. So this would be the wrong way. Hands and then elbows and then shoulder blades. I mean, it'll work. I don't think it's the best. Now, I don't want to go too heavy with these because I don't want to struggle trying to maintain good technique. Remember, it's about control first. So if you're going to err on one side, whether too heavy or too light, me personally, I'd rather go a little too light, maybe on my first set, but make sure that my technique is really dialed in. And then I can always make it harder by slowing down my rep speed a little, getting a little extra isometric squeeze, focus on that mind-muscle connection, and then the next set, I can always go heavier. So same thing, see how the dumbbell's right below my chest, elbows wide, driving them back. So initiate the movement, scapula, then elbow. And if you kind of look at the back of my shoulder blade, you see it. That movement here first, right? This is an exaggerated version of it, right? So here, then driving the elbows back. Nose hand position, not here, almost a neutral hand position. For me, a little less wear and tear on the elbows and shoulder. Oh, that felt good. Stretch it out. Oh. It's good stuff. This will be our last back exercise today, and we'll finish off with some biceps. Which, since this is a pull day, despite our best efforts to try to focus more on the back and minimize the engagement of the biceps, we're still using them. So they're already kind of pretty fatigued. Maybe even if you were to stand here, I want you to see what it looks like to initiate at the scapula. So look at the difference between initiating in the scapula and driving the elbows back here. So it's here, elbows, versus initiating by pulling the hands and using biceps. See this? Almost no movement there at the scapula. So I see people that do this. It's a ton of biceps here versus here. Let me get one or two more. There it is. Oh. Now remember, you're not going to be as strong when you try to minimize the engagement of the biceps. If I use a bunch of biceps, I'm going to end up using a much, much heavier weight. When you do this with a little more disciplined technique, you're going to have to go lighter. Good shit. I think we'll do that same band movement at the end of this third set. Just finish off strong. All right. Let's get it done. And why don't you swing around this way? I'll start this one the same way as we did the last one, so you can just see it from a different angle. The other one was kind of a little bit more from the side and behind. So here's what it looks like initiating it with the hands, pulling with the biceps, versus here, and then driving the elbows. So scapula, elbows. And then try to make it fluid. So in the beginning, I was making it intentionally a little more chunky so you could see the clear steps of scapula, elbows. But when you make it more smooth, more fluid, you can't really tell the difference. So I could do this, initiating at the biceps. Here, I'll just do it real quick. Where they look pretty much identical. And that's why I say you have to learn how to feel. It's not how they look. So this would be initiating with biceps, like this, versus initiating with the scapula and then the elbows, nice and smooth. They almost look the same, but they feel totally different. Before I take the time to rack that, let me real quick knock out a few reps. Oh yeah. I love the way that feels. That has a great contraction. Say it all the time, but there's a reason why I love bands. It's not a gimmick. Legitimately, the contractions that you can get with certain movements are just very, very unique. Often I'll compare a cable machine to bands because with both you can create resistance in different planes. But even then, there's a very different or distinct difference between the resistance curve with a cable machine versus those bands. I really think even to this day, they're still underrated. They're becoming more and more popular. When I first started talking about them, heavily in 2017, people poo-pooed all over that. Now you see it a lot. I see a ton of content on bands. Back then there was almost none. But even then, I still feel like they're underrated. Give it another 5-10 years. They just make way too much sense. They're relatively cheap, especially compared to equipment. They're lightweight, they're portable, they're super versatile, they work. It just makes too much sense. It's just impossible to ignore. Honestly, all this equipment is fun. Kind of doesn't make sense for a home gym. It's really not practical. It's awesome to have, but look how much space it ties up. All right, that was good. So we're going to do some biceps now. going to show you one that I don't think we've done in this series. I've done it a lot in band programs that I've created, like the TA2 build programs. But if we were to do any biceps curl with our arms out in front of us, say if we were seated and had a preacher bench, we were doing preacher curls, or if we were lying on a bench face down doing spider curls, the nice thing is we've got really good resistance here at the peak of the contraction versus if we're standing up, now we're locked out. So that's one advantage. The other is getting our arm or say our elbow out in front of our body creates a little bit different angle. Theoretically, it makes the short head of the biceps work a little bit harder. The long head of the biceps doesn't have that ideal length tension relationship on it. So that's why in theory, it's making the short head work a little harder. So taking that concept, bringing it into bands is actually really easy because with weights, we only have a vertical plane of resistance, so we have to orient our body to that plane of resistance, where with bands and cables, we have resistance in any plane. So now we can do them seated, standing, however you want. I like to do these seated, just requires a little less stabilizing, with your core and your body position or your base, which if you're playing sports, that's actually a good thing. You want to do that more. You want to train on your feet more, especially considering most sports, we're on our feet. But I'm going to do them seated today. So look at the angle of the band. Now we have resistance in a horizontal plane. I think this might be too much resistance, but let's see. So keeping the elbow in a disciplined position right there in front of me. I don't want to move it back and forth. That's not bad. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, 2 small suggestions here. 1, since we're pulling towards our face, make sure with your bands, and I do this every workout before I start. A lot of times you don't see it on camera, but I should probably show it every time. I'll just run the band through my hand so I can feel both the top and the bottom and the sides, right? So I can feel that side of the band, this side of the band, the underside, and the top. And all I'm doing is inspecting the band for any nicks or tears, rough areas, etc. And if you have any of those, then that's where you're going to have that potential for a band to break. So any of those movements where I'm pulling towards my face or my body, you definitely always want to inspect the band. So that's suggestion number 1. Number 2, with curls, that's where these fat grip style handles can be a nice addition. Like so. There we go. All right, set 2. I can adjust my tension on the band, increase it by sitting further back. Stretch the band more. One more. There's 10. If I want to crank out a few more, I can sit a little closer. It's almost like a drop set. Nice. Stretch out those biceps. We'll grab a drink of water. We got one more set of these, and that'll be a wrap. Now lately, if you've been following this series, it's been quite a few days where just wasn't feeling it, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do a series like this, is just show the reality of working out day to day, that it doesn't always look so pretty. Not every workout's going to be perfect. Your motivation or energy level isn't going to be super high every single day. Not if you do this long enough. So I think it's a good opportunity to share some of those little tricks that get me going on those days when I don't want to do it. And a really easy one that I'll use is starting with my easiest exercise first. Because I know that once I just get in and I do it, and I do set 1, that leads to set 2, to set 3, and then next thing you know, I'm on to the next exercise, and pretty soon the workout's done. So the most important part is starting. So there's nothing wrong with starting with an easier exercise, or maybe an exercise that you like more, something that's more fun. Start with that first. And just tell yourself, all right, I don't know what kind of workout this is going to be, but let me just get in there and let me at least do this. And like I said, one thing leads to another, and pretty soon you've knocked it out. So don't overthink it. Don't feel like you got to go in there, guns blazing on your first set. If you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. It's fucking cool. It happens, But the goal is, if you can get in there and start, then hopefully you can start ramping up the intensity and make it a great workout. So you notice with these, like most of the curls that I do, I like to get that supination there at the peak of the contraction, so turning that pinky high and then rotating to a neutral position at full extension. Oh man. Come on. Nice. That's it. That's all. Back and buys done. Check it off the list. And I'll see you next workout, which is legs.